So, what if the murder of a brilliant scientist, the most common substance in the universe, and your own consciousness were all tangled up in the same mystery? Today, we're diving into a fascinating theory that connects all three, and it all revolves around something you might have heard of, but maybe don't know the whole story about: plasma. But this story, it doesn't start in some dusty old textbook or a futuristic lab. No, this one starts with a very real, very recent crime, one that our source claims might just be the tip of a much, much larger iceberg. Okay, so on December 15th, a man named Nuno Loureiro was murdered. Now, this wasn't just anybody. He was a top-tier plasma physicist from MIT, a real leader in the quest for nuclear fusion. So you have these tragic, concrete facts, but they also serve as the rabbit hole for a way deeper mystery. And this leads us to the big question, the one this whole theory hinges on. Was this just a horrible, random tragedy? Or could it be the latest chapter in a long, hidden history to keep the true power of plasma science under wraps? To even begin to grasp the weight of that question, we first have to get on the same page. We need to understand what we're even talking about. So, what in the world is plasma? Well, put simply, you know solid, liquid, and gas, right? Plasma is what happens when you pump a gas so full of energy that its electrons literally get ripped away from their atoms. What you're left with is this soup of charged particles, and because it's charged, it behaves in a totally different way than the other states of matter. And here's the kicker. This isn't some rare, exotic stuff you only find in a lab. The source we're looking at really hammers this home. Plasma makes up a mind-blowing 99% of the visible universe. The sun, the stars, nebula. It's basically everything. It is the rule, not the exception. Now, here's why that matters so much. Why is it such a big deal when matter becomes plasma? Well, because it flips a switch. It shifts from being controlled by gravity, which is actually super weak, to being controlled by the electromagnetic force, which is unbelievably powerful. I mean, the difference in strength is just staggering, and this is absolutely central to the whole theory. So, according to the source, our modern, kind of sterile understanding of plasma is no accident. They argue that there's a very specific history here, a history of its discovery being intentionally sanitized and redirected. They point to a timeline that looks something like this. Back in the late 1800s, the guy who discovered it, Sir William Crookes, he called it radiant matter, and he even wrote about its strange, almost mystical qualities. But then, things start to change. By 1928, it gets this new clinical name, plasma, and the whole conversation shifts. All that mystical talk gets dropped, and the research gets funneled into these neat, controllable boxes like national security and nuclear weapons. And the source offers a pretty blunt reason for why this happened. This quote really says it all. The idea that plasma could be linked to consciousness itself was it was too much. It was too out there. So they swept it under the rug and buried it in classified projects. Right, so what is this consciousness plasma talk that was supposedly so dangerous? Well, this is where the theory takes a huge leap, connecting the entire cosmos directly to you and me. The theory goes a little something like this. Your heart, right now, is generating a powerful electromagnetic field around your body. This field is, in essence, your own personal bioplasma. And this personal field is constantly interacting with that universal sea of plasma we're all swimming in. The source claims that this is the actual physical mechanism behind things like getting a vibe from someone, or maybe even telepathy. So in this bigger picture, plasma isn't just ionized gas. No, it's described as something much more profound. It's the vehicle for consciousness, a living, sentient clay that our own consciousness molds and shapes into our reality. And if you accept that premise, that our reality is that responsive, the source argues that humanity is standing at a fundamental crossroads with a choice between two profoundly different futures. So, on one side, you have this path that's all about external tech, AI, quantum computing, UAPs. The source suggests this path is driven by fear and disconnection, and it ultimately leads to us being controlled by outside forces. But then there's the other path, the path of internal empowerment. This one focuses on plasma, consciousness, psychology. It's driven by self-awareness, and it leads to true personal power. Okay, so let's just run with this for a second. If we accept the theory, how does a person actually walk that second path? How do you even begin to apply this kind of knowledge in your own life? Well, the source suggests a process that actually mirrors how plasma works. It starts with an event. Something happens inside you or outside in the world.
This creates tension, right? Potential energy. That tension opens up a little window, a moment for an information exchange, a new insight. If you grab that insight and apply it, you achieve coherence. You literally level up your reality. But if you ignore it, you fall into decoherence and you just end up repeating the same old cycles.
And here's the real takeaway for you personally. It means that doing the inner work, healing old traumas, changing your limiting beliefs, that's not just some psychological exercise. According to this theory, it has a real physical effect. It makes your personal plasma field more coherent. And a more coherent field, the idea goes, naturally attracts a more coherent, abundant reality that matches what you truly want.
All of which leaves us with one last massive question to think about. If this theory is even partly true, if we really are swimming in a living, responsive ocean of plasma that connects everything, what becomes possible when we stop just treading water and finally learn how to swim?